Hey guys, welcome back to another AspieWorld podcast. So pumped. Hope you're enjoying these daily episodes. I am joined today by a new guest, somebody who I'd met, I'm not entirely sure if either social media or email. Anyway, we're going to get into all that right now. But before we do, I know that you're listening and some of you haven't subscribed yet, so make sure you subscribe. And if you're really enjoying this podcast, can you go to the review section on your podcast app and just be like, hey, Dan, love the app. It's so cool. Or whatever you think is cool. It'd be really awesome. Really help me out. And if you want to leave a review here on YouTube, that would also be dope. Okay, Ari, how are you, man? Like, explain to us who you are, what you do, and everything in between.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Dan, for having me on. And I have been doing my MA in education studies, and I wrote about video education for dyslexics, and then started my journey from there to start basically implementing what I learned in university on this topic, and started my journey on YouTube. And through that, my channel was kind of born. One of the first videos were actually a oral exam that I had on the topic of neurodiversity in university, and I wasn't able to schedule an appointment with my professor, and that way I got my first videos up. Was super nervous, and but I got them out, so that was good. And that just grew a lot, and now people are reaching out to me, and I've been offering coachings for dyslexic adults, and that is going well. Overall, it has been just really, really gratifying work because I'm dyslexic myself, so my heart is really in it, and that's kind of how this developed, really.
Interesting.
Yeah, so those are the first things about me, really.
So I want to talk about dyslexia really quickly. So I'm dyslexic. It was my first diagnosis was dyslexia. And my gosh, it's probably one of the most interesting conditions I have, because it's not only debilitating in certain areas of your life, it also has a secondary impact of feeling kind of inferior in certain situations, because if you can't read, you're a full-grown adult and you can't read a word properly, people are like, dude, come on. And everyone has an opinion on it, right? They're like, you need to learn more at school, or you're lazy, or all this crap. And so have you felt like this as well?
I mean, look, for the longest time, I really tried to prove those people wrong that were saying these negative things about me. We're saying, well, you cannot do it. And, you want to go to university? Well, that's not going to happen. Those kind of things came up. And of course, every time you're in class or in some kind of situation where things are read out loud, you kind of see the line and it's coming closer to you. And okay, now I need to read. And it's like, you're kind of nervous and just kind of sweating. And it of course, it makes you feel different. And it's super difficult.
So when I was in university, we had an award-winning dyslexia centre called the Miles Dyslexia Centre here in Bangor, Wales, in the University of Wales in Bangor. And it's a fantastic facility. One of the things they did was they had these when I was handing in my dissertation, I had a yellow form that I'd put on the front of it, and this yellow slip just basically said, this person's dyslexic, bear this in mind whilst grading this paper. And that was really interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. We did not really have that. Me in Germany, I basically had to, tell them, and then they had a meeting where they then decided if they wanted to give these kind of things to me and wanted to actually, basically give me some more time and also consider it while grading. So that was done, and I was given that, but it seemed like it wasn't really an automatic process, even though I did get the help then eventually.
Dude, that's crazy. Another thing was what they call reasonable adjustments, right? So they give you extra time, or they do something like give you access to use a computer, because obviously handwriting may be quite difficult for you. And I think that like having those things, having those little pieces kind of injected into your journey, I was being a dyslexic student or a dyslexic learner, really helped kind of give you a level playing field with the other students, right? Or the other kind of like people, learners in that environment. How do you feel like on a whole, how do you feel the world's attitude towards dyslexia is now?
Well, I feel it really depends on the country you're in. So, for example, I had some people from South Africa, and I feel like, she was telling me, I mean, of course, these are anecdotal stories that I'm hearing, but I hear about physical abuse around that, and that is something that was really heavy. And actually, if you look into the studies around that, dyslexics are like around 7 times higher. There's a 7 times higher likelihood of us experiencing that as a kid, as a form of punishment.
Holy
and
shit.
yes,
Why? How would that even happen? I mean, like, look, physical abuse is something that should never be tolerated anyway. But I mean, like, how does that even happen? How does somebody say, do you know what? This person's struggling, so what we need to do is make him struggle even more. Let's give him a good old slap.
yes.
Like, how does that make any sense? What was the?
I mean, it does not. I could have said, like, she was actually, what I've heard from her is that she was like really beaten with a book. So that's like the extent to where it can go, and it is absolutely
Nonsensical, right?
Yeah, it's nonsensical, and I have not heard of anything like that, for example, in Europe. But these things do happen, and it is also, I think, a big part of why mental health is such a big topic in the dyslexic community. Because you're kind of, if you think about us as a group, we're missing these fundamental skills to do reading and writing, right? To do that properly. But then you're giving the task as if you were neurotypical.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, in a way, you could argue that we're set up to fail in a way. And through then people are like, well, we're getting worried, and we need to up the pressure a little bit so that this kid is keeping up, or like basically makes it in some way. And if you're then not diagnosed, then people just don't understand what's going on with you, and the default answer is like, well, kind of slow or kind of stupid or something along those lines. And that can have like serious impact on your self-esteem and the way you feel about yourself. And yeah.
What's interesting about that as well? Because, like, as a society, everything we do should be for the group, right? It's for the group of society. And within that group, we have factions, different dynamics of, you and your spouse, you and your kids, you and your friends. Then it's the bigger circle of maybe all the dyslexic students, and you got society, and then you got every person, animal on the planet, and then you got everything else in the universe. And so when you think about, like, your attitudes towards the group are going to do one of two things, right? An equal or opposing reaction, right? You're either going to worsen the situation, which will end up worsening the situation of the group, or you're going to improve the condition of said people in the group, and the entire group will move forward towards a civilization that is prosperous and successful. And I find it so bizarre that people would treat members of the group, in such negative ways, because it's going to impact them. Like, let's put it this way: if you're a teacher and you have a dyslexic student, right, younger than you, and you're an older teacher, and you treat the dyslexic student like crap, when you become old and grey and they're the ones looking after you, what do you think is going to happen? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's also like, I think the idea of, like, what are we missing out on? Like, what if all the dyslexics that go through the education system wouldn't be kind of scarred when they get out of it at the end? What would that what would that be like? And how much potential are we wasting by not taking care of it properly, really?
100%. It's like, it is crazy, because I think, the thing can be said for many different kind of groups in a similar situation, a situation of kind of a lack of opportunity maybe, or someone in an underdeveloped nation where you think, they could be such a brilliant mind that could contribute towards societal group, but they haven't got the chance or the opportunity. So we should never shun them. We should try and kind of like encourage that and urge them towards an existence, right? And I think that's just fascinating. But dyslexia has been...
And then,
sorry.
Wait, I just would like to add something there. And then at the same time, like I was, a few years ago, I was in Texas, Dallas at the Shelton School. And I talked to, and that's a school that's specifically for people with dyslexia and also people with ADHD. And I talked to people who were at that school and they were generally happy there. So I'm like, wow, apparently we are actually really able to do it, right?
It's how you apply the education, right? Like you can't, and I had this conversation the other day. I was talking to somebody on my podcast yesterday, a guy called Sam from Young, what the heck was it? I can't remember the name of his company. It's like an academy for like twice gifted people. I don't know if you heard of that term. And he was saying that like, the when you apply the right conditions for learning or scholastic education, the person can excel in ways that they far surpass whatever you thought would happen, because you're tailoring the environment, or you're tailoring their learning style to them, and it makes sense. But when you're faced with this old archaic Isambard, Kingdom Brunel, Industrial Revolution, this is how school and education will be from the academic standpoint, you kind of get a little bit like, oh, okay, well, I don't fit into that mold, because basically all you're getting taught in school is show up on time, clock in, with your working card, know when you can take your lunch break, ask your supervisor if you can take a toilet break, go home, and don't ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea was to create factory workers, right? In the day. Yeah, so that is definitely problematic, but it is. I found it very comforting to see that we are able to do it differently, and I got kind of hope from that, because looking at my school experience, a lot of feelings that I had were very negative towards it. I was like, I really had such resentment towards that institution that I went to as a child.
Yes,
that to see that there is actually an option to make that experience so much more positive. That is actually, I really like to see that, and some hope.
It's kind of reconciling your trauma from school, right?
In a way, yeah.
I like that. Okay, so you said that this whole dyslexia kind of thing isn't all of what you do. What else do you do? What else are you about? Come on, tell us some more. I'm interested now. You got me going.
So besides my channel and the coachings that I do, what else? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, what I've been doing for a while is, like, I came here to Israel, and I started. This is not really related to dyslexia, but I started working in a historical institution, and I started to interview people that survived or were able to flee from Nazi Germany. So they were Austrians, and I had a lot of interviews with survivors from that time, and interviewed them and talked about their experience, sometimes even in concentration camps. And those are also, that's one job that I do at the side. And I create now a lot of their social media content, so work with those files and talk to a lot of researchers and basically give them a platform to
it's so important,
the research.
Yeah, because that was a piece of history that's like we need to really know, so that never happens again. I mean, that's horrible, isn't it? It's funny you should say that. I did a video diving into the Hans Asperger, Austria, Nazi Vienna kind of takeover when the Nazis took over Vienna, and is should we be using the term Asperger syndrome, or was he a Nazi, and all this kind of stuff. Really interesting, because there's a paper on it, right? There's a big hoo-ha in 2018 about Hans Asperger, and it's really interesting. You should totally read that if you haven't already. Read the paper, because I feel like they unjusted they unjust persecute Hans Asperger when there's no actual hard evidence that he was anything to do with the Nazis, right? And so it's kind of like it's a really interesting concept. But it's funny because I was literally just talking about this. He was in Nazi occupied Vienna, crazy time in history. Like, you got these totalitarian nut jobs. It's crazy. Like, what a crazy time to be alive, and to survive it is a miracle because it was just horrendous, horrendous.
Yeah.
So that
definitely.
So how?
So that is that.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that will be one part, and then also the what I've been doing at university. Like I've also been giving some lectures on for teachers that are or students that will become teachers in a little bit. On the topic of dyslexia and educating them on it, and giving them a little bit of an idea of what it's like, and also communicating that it's not just reading and writing, that it's more than that. You have the executive functioning, you have the mental health aspect to it, and that is also something that I do, and I try to do on a more regular basis. So that is also
interesting. So, in terms of your YouTube channel, like when did you start it, or when did you start uploading videos? Like, how long ago have you started doing this?
I think I started now around. I've been doing it now for around 4 years, something like that. I started during the pandemic, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay, what an interesting time to start that. How have you found? How have you found? When you put something out public, you are persecuted to ridicule by people, right? How have you found that? How have you found navigating through like hate comments and stuff?
Well, interestingly, I have not gotten a lot of that. Very little, actually, barely any. But it's a big thing. I was just uploading it, was jumping around the apartment, totally nervous about the entire thing. And for me, it was just a big growing experience. And then also getting back the positive feedback from that was also really, really nice. And the negative side didn't really come up. I had one time where I talked about dyslexia and the topic of disability. So where they're discussing that and having a look at that. And I was basically talking about how personally I didn't really see myself really as disabled for a long time. So that is kind of how I framed it for myself. And I didn't really, I wasn't really willing to accept that for myself. Also, like, I think as a form of keeping up the fight in that sense.
Yeah, like an imposter syndrome, right? Like you
maybe
you weren't really it's hard, rejecting the idea that you could be, the class as a disabled, right?
Yeah. So that was something that I was arguing, and basically I posted that in a group of Australian people, and they didn't really like that, and they actually found it that I was looking at being disabled as something negative, as something that I don't want. And then they went into the ableist direction and actually threw me out of the group without talking about it, without having a discussion about it. So that was actually something that was the harshest criticism that I've ever had, and something that I kind of had to work through and kind of struggle with. But yeah, I kind of basically thought about it some more, and at the end I actually did feel like the video that I made was kind of misunderstood more often than I would like that. So I actually put it on unlisted, so that it doesn't come across in a way that I don't want it to come across.
Of course.
Yeah.
Somebody's always going to disagree with what you say, right? You could say, like, I love everybody. Yeah, someone's going to say, can't love everyone, mate. It's like, oh, come on, just shut up. And, like, I think somebody was like, did the thing where they said, oh, there's the age-old argument where you can argue at anything by saying, they put a picture of, like, a twig or something up and they say, this is a stick. And then everyone in the comments like, actually, it's a twig. Actually, it's a branch. It's like, oh, it's the same thing, isn't it? But yeah, but people will just argue with anything, which I find really fascinating because it's like, what are we doing? Anyway, regardless of that, here's my kind of final question for you. Where do you see the future of dyslexic and dyslexia advocates and kind of like where we're headed in terms of how we understand things like dyslexia?
So let's put it like this. What I would hope, the way it would go is that we would look at it in a more holistic way. So, for example, like you're not just dyslexic, you have different diagnoses that you got. And I think we really need to see that and kind of look at the individual as a whole. That would be nice. I think it is going in the direction. I think there's getting more awareness around that. And then on top of that, I would hope that we kind of like in the dyslexic community. I don't know how it's in the autism world. You're hearing a lot about the dyslexic superpowers and those kind of talk, right? And I have actually a lot of people that are kind of offended with that because either it doesn't apply to them or they feel like, okay, we're not buying it. And then you look at the research and you find, okay, well, this is actually not really supported the way it's promoted. So the evidence for these statements are often not there. And I feel like, we need to, or what a solution, and I'm not entirely finished with this thought process, but I think one solution could be to just look at the individual and look at their strengths and talents and promote them and make sure that those individual amazing aspects of us as dyslexics are being seen, and that we can support each other that way.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think like, and the bigger picture is looking at the person as the whole person, right? Not just like that one area. And I think when we do that, we then start looking and implementing things, because right now, if you say so, I've got an issue and I'm dyslexic, they'll kind of look at the dyslexia thing and give you all the tips for dyslexia. But the bigger picture is that dyslexia is also megally impacted by the ADHD, right? So how do we get the two to work really well together, and then the autism as well, so what's the big picture here, and I think that's so interesting because people don't do that. And it's that I mean,
even in the diagnosing world, like what's the point in just doing one diagnosis of one thing if that only gives you a slight piece of the puzzle? You should really have an evaluation where all these things are considered to then get to a point where you really understand the person.
Absolutely. And I think that's the future, or that's the revolution of it, like where are we headed and how will it benefit the group as a whole? And then that's how we do it. But Ajay, I think, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think we've definitely started a thought process in the minds of many. So if people want to get in touch with you or check out your YouTube channel, where do they go? What's your online handles?
So basically, if you put in dyslexia and then dyslexia, let's say you put in dyslexia test, then my face will pop up. And you can also find me, basically find me there. Write in REA. REA, my last name is Dehaas, so that is DE, new word, HAAS. And then I will pop up on YouTube, and in every description box, you will find a link to my website.
It's really funny, dude. Like, I actually have come across your videos before, especially the dyslexia test one. There was a Are You Dyslexic one, right? And that was really interesting. And I love, you're very clever. You're a very clever YouTuber. I will link everything down below. I'll link your YouTube channel so people can check you out. And anyone listening on the podcast, check out the show notes. I will put the link to RJ's YouTube channel in there. So, dude, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.